We invite you to stay tuned for the live broadcast of the Wednesday evening Bible study of the Mayfield Drive Baptist Church, located at 271 Mayfield Drive, Smyrna, Tennessee. We will now join the service.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Welcome to Mayfield Drive Baptist Church, our Wednesday evening Bible study. And for those of you that are here in the building, got handouts at the back. We're going to continue with our study on humanism, lesson number 11. Last lesson, I left off this. Figured I would give everyone a break. But I brought it back. I told you I was bringing it back, and I did. Humanism is an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. Now, I know we've had this almost every single lesson, and I'm sure y'all are sick and tired of seeing it. Sister Sheila shakes her head yes. But now, as we look at this particular doctrine of humanism, this will start to play out in your mind. So today we're going to look at the humanist doctrine of one world government. And as we go through this, again, the definition of humanism will start to click. Okay? But first, we're going to look at Revelation chapter 13. We're going to look at verses 1 through 7. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Verse 6, And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. In the book of Revelation, it is revealed that there is coming a future time when the world will be one government, and there will be a world dictator. The funny thing is, finally, humanism and biblical doctrine agree. And that's not a good thing. But we agree. Christians know that this dictator will be the Antichrist, who will obtain his power from Satan. But have you ever thought about how that would come about? There's a lot of talk about it, and I'm sure there's a lot of scholars that have this discussion. But as the average child of God, have you thought about it? Used to? I used to think about it. I still do at times. And when I do, the one thing that comes to my mind was religion. But that's not the case. And the reason I say that's not the case is because we've got all these different religions. Satan would not have, in my mind, and this is Robert's theology, but Satan would not have created all of these false religions if he was going to unite them all under one religion. Okay? He's spent the years that the earth has been here since sin in the Garden of Eden. He spent that time creating layer after layer after layer of false religions. How would he join them all under one religion? He would have to undo everything that he has done, right? All the work that he has done. True, but think about it. How else would he do it? It's like, a big idea. How would you do it? I thought money. Right? One world currency. But how would he bring everybody together? Ideology. Ideology. And that's what we've been looking at. While it is true that many will not accept this, there are many more who will, because they have been brainwashed into believing that it is the best thing to do. Yes?
Brother Jamie, on that same mentality, it's kind of you're seeing the crust of it now, a little bit of it now. Like I told you before, people don't do their own research into the fact they accept.
That's right.
What the crowd is wanting.
And how many times have you had your kids come home and say, well, this is what it is? Well, how do you know that? Well, the teacher said that. Where did the teacher get it from? Is the teacher right? And every one of these doctrines that we've been looking at in humanism, we have instances or we have quotes from textbooks, public school textbooks, that we look at, right? And we've talked about numerous times about the fact that we have individuals, we have Christian men and women who are in the public school system, teachers, trying to be a godly witness. Yes, sir.
I have come to the conclusion that this critical race theory is nothing but humanism encapsulated into what can be taught now.
You bring about a good point in that critical race theory. You remember in the 60s and 70s, you remember civil rights. And it was the thing to get behind. Because it was the right thing to do. And now, I grew up thinking and being taught that you look at the content of a man's character, not the color of a man's skin. But yet now, we are being forced into, no longer is it the content of a character. The character doesn't matter. Content of a person's character does not matter. We're now looking at all these other divisive factors. Race, sexual orientation, gender, all of these things, right? All of these things. And all it has done is dividing us more and more. Instead of uniting us, it's under the claim to unite us, meanwhile actually dividing us. Okay? That is brainwashing.
Brother Jamie, one thing on that, and what's being done today is actually undoing, to give you an example, what Martin Luther King was doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're still holding up high, but they're undoing what he had been.
We call that undermining.
Exactly.
Undermining everything that has happened civil rights wise. That's what critical race theory is doing, is undermining every milestone that civil rights has made in the last 30, 40, 50 years, right? See, I can't count 60, say 69, 70 to now almost 50 years, right? No, we don't talk about that, right? Like that old saying, when I think 30 years ago, I think 1970s. I don't think 1990s. It's like, whoa, hey, no, don't do that. Right. People of today are rapidly heading toward that one world government. How are we getting there? Look around. All you have to do is look around. Look at Europe, the EU. All right? Africa has the same thing. Did y'all know that? United States of Africa. They're countries that are banded together just like, I actually think it's called the African Union, but it's just like the European Union of a lesser degree, because none of those countries agree and can really work together like the EU does. But they're trying. Already in South America, countries band together. I have guys stationed in South America that are able to travel from one country to the next without visas because their countries have agreements together that they can travel no problem for business. All we got to do is look around. This is not stuff that you see every day, folks. But it's there. It's easily found if we look. The average public school child knows more about the entire world than the average adult does. When I was going to school, I was homeschooled. But when I was going to school, I learned about world history encapsulated and then U.S. history in detailed. But now, U.S. history is like, done. You get more of state history than you do U.S. history. Now, the average adult doesn't know that much about the world in regards to history and things like that, unless they've spent time studying that. The public school child knows more about the world around than they do their own country. There does not seem to be as much teaching concerning local history as there is world history. My kids know more about world history than they do U.S. history. I know that for a fact. Many school children can tell very little about United States history, but much about world history. You know, I keep saying that over and over again. But there's a reason for that. And as we get into the quotes, you'll see the reason for that. Which blank are you looking for?
I got it.
You got it? Many of the events that adults learned that were significant to the making of this nation are not even taught to children today in the public school system. Do you realize that? So many things that are critical to the formation of this country aren't taught. Why? Why aren't they taught? Do you know there was a gentleman by the name of, his last name is Crowder, and he has I will apologize for mentioning this in church because he does use some foul language at quite times. But he has a YouTube show, a YouTube channel called Louder with Crowder. And he's a conservative by politics, and he goes around to different areas of the country and he asks questions of people about the United States. And he specializes in asking questions about politics. And if he asks about the Constitution, if he asks about the amendments, if he asks about the Bill of Rights, if he asks about all of these things, and he'll ask questions about them, people don't know what he's talking about. And sadly, even if he pulls it up and shows them, they don't believe it. I suggest you look at some of his videos where he asks questions of people. Goes to major universities, asks questions, okay? These are universities. People being taught history still don't know American history. But there's a reason. Because they are striving for a one-world government. Let's look at the definition of this doctrine. The belief that a global citizenship should replace national self-determination. Replace national self-determination. Now we got the definition. Let's look at the philosophy. A world superstate would replace national self-determination as an evolutionary step toward human unity. That sounds good. Maybe, right? Human unity? What does that sound like? The definition of humanism. The doctrine as it is found in the Humanist Manifesto 2, 1973. Principle number 12. We deplore the division of humankind on nationalistic grounds. We have reached a turning point in human history. Remember, 1973. We have reached a turning point in human history where the best option is to transcend the limits of national sovereignty and to move toward the building of a world community in which all sectors of the human family can participate, humanity as a whole. At present juncture of history, commitment to all humankind is the highest commitment of which we are capable. The highest commitment of which we are capable.
On that same, going towards this unity aspect, you're seeing that to where now this big push about voting rights, taking away you don't have to have identification, but they say it's unequal to the minorities. So I know exactly that's what that's moving to. Government run instead of individuals for the best of the individuals.
We could really go a long way on that. But we're not gonna touch that one right now. The doctrine as it was found in public school textbooks. Like I said, we could jump all over that, but we'll never get through this lesson. So we're gonna. The doctrine as it was found in public school textbooks, again, 1984, 1985. The first quote we're going to look at is found in American Government, copyrighted in 1980, High School American Government, Teacher's Manual, page 75. The Teacher's Manual now, folks. Our Living Constitution, introducing Unit 5. To start a discussion of this unit, ask students whether they would consider going to a dentist or use a doctor who practiced medicine as it was in the 13 colonies. Ask them how they managed to live under a United States Constitution that is 200 years old. Is that Constitution as out of date as the dental and medical techniques of 200 years ago? That's the first quote. Remember that one. Many peoples, one nation. Copyrighted 1973, Grade 5 American History Students Edition, page number 88. Go where you may, and search where you will. Search our every wrong. Does that sound familiar? Then you will agree with me that for revolting barbarity, and shameless hypocrisy, America has no rival. Yes. Exactly. Yes. People, you're right. They were not. I mean, into the early 90s, these books were still in circulation. People of the World, copyright 1982, grade 6, Social Studies, Teacher's Edition, page 14. This report will reinforce the book's description of the world as a global village with a global bank of human culture. End quote. Now, before we go any further, the world is a global village. What do we hear about our children? It takes a village to raise our children. Hogwash. There are several more statements to this same effect in several other places in this same book. People of the World, copyrighted 1982, grade 6 Social Studies. Teaching our sixth graders at that time, what? We're all part of a global village. We're all one people. Now I'm going to say this. Thinking of ourselves as one people is not necessarily a bad thing. And the reason I say that, as a child of God, we should be thinking of all of us as one people. Why? We're all sinners. We all are in need of a Savior. But that should stop there. Okay? First reason that should stop there, and I'm getting away from notes, but the first reason that should stop there is each country, each nationality has their own culture. Yes. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because we're not there yet. Everybody's not brainwashed yet. We're not there yet. So those are good points. But I'm saying from a humanist point of view, that doesn't matter. I'm not saying what you said didn't matter. I'm saying from the point of view that we're looking at, what you're stating doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. You following me now? You understand why I said that to you? It's a good concept, but the facts don't matter, right? A global village with a global bank of human culture. That is impossible. Because we all, even in the United States, north, south, east, west, southeast, southwest, northwest, northeast, they're all different. They all have a different culture, different subculture underneath American culture, right? Yeah, they're so bored with only one culture. You're right. None of us have a different accent. All of us have the same accent. All of us have the same culture. Not going to happen. That's all one. And that's great in theory. But that means that none of us are different. Right? This is 4A. There's a reason there's 4A. There will be a 4B. 4A, American government, comparing political experiences. Whew, that's a big statement for a textbook. Copyright 1979. That was a fantastic year. High School Civil Government, Students Edition, 500, page 587. The future of global political systems because of increased interdependence. That's a key word there. Interdependence. Okay? Some people predict one increasingly integrated system for global politics. But let me tell you something. Look at the integrated system for global politics. What one system dominates the world politically? Socialism. And all socialism is communism light. Right? 4B, American Government Comparing Political Experiences, same book, page 495. In important respects, we are also citizens of the world. We're not just citizens of the United States, we're also citizens of the world. Hogwash. Quote number 5. United States government, the people decide. Copyrighted 1979, High School Civil Government, Students Edition, Introduction, page III. And I quote, "We now live in an age in which we must recognize that our interdependence extends beyond national boundaries from the local to the global community." (6A) American Citizenship, The Way We Govern, copyrighted 1979, High School Civil Government, Students Edition, page 451. Some people think that the countries of the world must come together under a world government, that only with a world government is there a chance of saving the earth for humankind. End quote. Socialism. Socialism. But look at what they said. There's a chance of saving the earth for humankind. I said mankind. It's actually humankind, right? What does that sound like? Save the planet. That's right, right. This was normal. That's right. Yeah, this is normal. Exactly.
We got taught that, and in turn, teaching our children from the newer textbooks, we're reading it to them like it's from Mars.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense to us because we were taught it.
Yeah.
We were taught it from people we believed more than we believed our parents.
Right.
That's the key. We spent more time. Now, about this same time that these were coming out, right? It was full into where you needed 2 incomes to make ends meet. Everybody remember that? Okay? We went from a society where we had 1 income, so you had one parent working, the other parent teaching the children, right? And dealing with these things. We went from that to now both parents have to work, and who is teaching our children? The government. And what happened at that time? The American government is bad. American way of life is bad. Equality for all of these things that we're finding are now, teachers are believing it because now they believe it. They were taught it. So when a teacher would see this in 79 and 80, they didn't think nothing of it Because they were taught it. Number one, write a constitution for a world government. That's the quote. Now, I asked this question. High school government in 1979, so high school students in 1979, if they were given a scenario to write a constitution for a world government, do you think that that world government constitution would look anything like the U.S. Constitution? Absolutely not. Because more than likely, that high school student wouldn't even know what the U.S. Constitution stated. Quote number 7. And I'm pretty sure this is the last quote for this lesson. American Citizenship Program. Wow, that should be a great textbook. We'll find out it's not. Copyright 1977, High School Civil Government, Students Edition, page 785. Many people think a stronger UN or a new international organization is needed if we and the other peoples of the world are to move safely. And that's your blank, but guess what? That's the most important word in here. Why? Because when we hear safety, we immediately think, oh, that's what we've got to do to be safe. We're programmed. I'm going to tell you, I work for a large corporation and I have several employees that report to me. And we have what's called a stop work program. Stop work for safety, stop work for quality. You ring that stop work for safety, woo! Everything stops. And it doesn't matter if it was unsafe or not. But you said the safety word, everything stops until they determine that it is truly safe to continue. We are programmed that safety is most important. Y'all understand that? How many of you rode in the back window of the back dash, of your parents' car?
Yes.
Hallelujah, I loved it up there. My sister could have the back seat, I'd take the back window, no problem. I didn't even have to touch her. She didn't have to touch me. You're too young. You would have no clue what we're even talking about. The back of a truck? Oh yeah, that was not. I told my kids the other day. I said, for some reason we were eating pizza, and the thought popped in my head of when I worked for a gentleman who owned a couple of pizza places in the Atlanta area. Pizza Inns, particularly. We lived in Cobb County. They were in DeKalb, on the other side of Atlanta. And I looked at my daughter and my stepson and I said, you won't believe this, but at the age of 12, I rode in the back, not the back seat, I rode in the bed of a Nissan pickup truck on the interstate from one side of Atlanta to the other side of Atlanta. And they were like, oh, yes. But no, we were done for the day and headed home. He was taking me home. It's dark now, and we're coming back from the other side of Atlanta back to Marietta where we lived. Okay? Riding on the interstate, 80 miles an hour, I'm in the bed of the truck. And today, that gentleman would be in prison. Now, granted, I would not want my kids riding in the bed of the truck the way I drive a pickup truck through the streets of Atlanta. Yes, it was great. It was great. There was not as much traffic then. That is correct. And people did not drive as crazy. And to believe it or not, when people would see a kid sitting in the back, they paid attention. They were more responsible.
My husband and his older and younger brothers, his parents, and his two grandparents went in a tiny, and I'm not even talking just a regular bed pickup, but a tiny diesel Mitsubishi from Nashville to California to whatever.
Yep.
From Nashville, they all drove in a pickup with it open and slept in it with sleeping bags across the country over the period of a week.
All right, now this is hilarious because here we are reading a quote talking about, we've got to have a better UN so we can move safely into the 21st century. Right? We're teaching kids this, but at the same time, yes, sir.
You were talking about the word safety, bringing everything to a halt. When Angela and I were in the Civil Air Patrol, they taught us even the lowest cadet could bring everything to a screeching halt, even if it was done by generals. Knock it off. And they had to stop everything until it was determined it was safe.
That's right.
The lowest cadet.
That's right. That's right. Now, the funny thing about all of this is we are conditioned. Safety, safety, safety. Right? I tell my employees, I said, you guys better be safe because I do not want to call your wives. I know your wives. I do not want to make that phone call to your wife to let her know something's happened to you halfway across the world. Okay? But, again, we're at the word safety in regard to our government. Okay? Only a stronger world body, they argue, can meet tomorrow's challenges. We're going to have to get on because I jumped off on a soapbox and stayed on that. So let's begin a closer examination of these quotes. We're not going to get very far in this, I promise you, but we'll get a little bit. The quotes provided completely tear down all traces of patriotism that a student may have had. Today, we have an American flag and we have the Christian flag here. When I was growing up, the American flag at the beginning of school, every day we stood at attention, placed our hand over our heart, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance to Old Glory. We still do. Some schools. That's right. Your school does. However, that's getting fewer and fewer and fewer. And do you know, even in your school that does stand up and salute the flag every morning, do you know that there are students that can sit through that and not recite that pledge, and as a teacher, you can't do anything about it? When I was growing up, if you didn't stand and salute the flag, I promise you were either getting smacked, getting your hand smacked right then, or you were going to the principal. But now, because of what has been taught for the last 40 plus years, patriotism is gone. Unless it's taught at home, patriotism is gone. They cast the United States, these quotes, cast the United States into the dirt to be trampled and walked upon. No, United States as a whole, our country as a whole, these quotes put patriotism and put our country in the dirt. The first two quotes are nothing but treasonous in my mind. This is a personal opinion. I'll leave it at that. But anything that diminishes our country and what it stands for is treason. It would seem that the authors of these books containing the books containing these quotes, I can't talk. It would seem that the authors of the books containing these quotes are trying their best to destroy everything good for which the United States stand. The foundation of what this country stands for, they're destroying it. It's going to the heights of absurdity to compare the Constitution of the United States to the practices of colonial doctors and dentists. Of course, we would not want to consider going to a doctor or dentist who only had the knowledge of the colonists and who only used these methods. That's kind of scary. The humanists want to keep away from the student's knowledge the fact that the Constitution of the United States was written and founded upon biblical principles. If you notice, the title was, in quote, Our Living Constitution. Our Living Constitution. The Constitution is not a living document. Once it was signed, it stood in perpetuity. However, just like the Bible upon which the Constitution was based, it still applies today. And just because we say the Bible, oh, it was written 2,000 years ago, or almost 2,000 years ago, it doesn't apply. It's not applicable today. It still stands today. Those principles are still applicable. The Constitution is still applicable. We amend it as needed. Okay? That doesn't change the Constitution, the overall document. We add to it. That's what those amendments are. They're additions. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, etc., etc., etc. You cannot have those amendments without the Constitution. The contention that it is a living document is what has caused so much strife in the country today. We look at our Supreme Court, and now they're talking about expanding the court, what they call packing the court. Right? There is a process for doing that. A constitutional process for doing that. But here's the thing. The reason that that is even being talked about is because of a disregard for our Constitution. Okay? Again, I'm not trying to wax political here, but it's necessary to understand what humanism and this doctrine is doing to our country and has done to our country. The contention that our Constitution is living, that it should evolve, and that it should change with the whim is treason. I'm going to be honest. It's treason. And the reason why is because it's not voted on by 2/3 of the states. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's right. Now, a living document means that it can change on a whim, as it will, right? Which means that every individual in here could change the Constitution as they saw it, right? If it was a living document. And the issues, the contentions that we have in our country today is because we have Supreme Court justices that believe that the Constitution is a living document. And when we have a judge that is being proposed to the Supreme Court, when they're considered a constitutionalist, that means they stand on the fact that the Constitution was written, it still applies, does not need to be changed, and does not need to be modified to fit the times. Because there's nothing wrong with it. That's what a constitutionalist is. Sadly, we have too few. The second quote comes from a textbook that would teach fifth graders that the United States is the worst country on the face of the earth. Do you remember that quote? Look around. You'll find that you'll find the same thing that I have. I can't remember the exact quote. I can't quote the quote because I ain't got the quote in front of me. It is not a wonder that most of the youth today have no feelings of loyalty toward their nation. It is sad. It really is sad. I was talking to my kids a while back, and we were talking about, because one of them made a statement about democracy. And I looked at him and I said, this household is not a democracy. In any shape, form, or the fact. I said, a matter of fact, is this country a democracy? Oh, yeah. Wrong. And they just looked at me like, oh, great, now he's going to go on. right. He's going to start telling us why we're wrong. The point is, we shouldn't have to. I'm going to be honest with you. I learned what it was. But society drummed into my head over and over and over that this country is a democracy. And it wasn't until I started looking back on it again, when we were talking about the Constitution, Brother Bernie and Brother Joe and I were talking about the Constitution and the amendments, and I started looking back on it again, that what I had learned in school came back. About it being a constitutional republic, not a democracy, right? But see, here's the thing. I learned it in school, but my peers did not learn that in school. It may have been in the textbooks, but that's not what they got. Because I'm going to be honest, how many kid actually reads the textbook? Read enough to answer the questions on the test. There were some that did. But hold on. But how many times did those people actually think about what they memorized? They memorized it for the song, memorized it for whatever the class was, but did they?
Yeah, we had to learn. 6 weeks later.
6 weeks later, it's gone. I'm going to tell you, I learned algebra, I learned trig, I learned calculus, and could not do any of it now. Right? The point is, if they're not taught, it doesn't stick. And it may be in the textbook, but just like our quotes, those quotes may have been overlooked by teachers. But here's the deal, guys. Here's what the point of all these quotes means. You may have some teachers that said, that is hogwash. I am not teaching these kids that. Right? Teach them what they need to know to pass the test for that textbook and sticking to the truth. But the sad part is the majority of teachers were not. It was in the textbook. They were programmed to go by what was in the textbook. Because smarter minds than them wrote the textbook. Right? How many times have you heard Brother Bernie say something from the pulpit and accepted it because it was Brother Bernie that said it from the pulpit? How many times have you accepted something that I've said or Brother Joe has said or someone else said as a teacher or preacher or pastor and just accepted it because of who said it? Maybe they even made it sound good.
Well, you'll also invite us to say, please, let's discuss and refine it and prove me wrong if I.
That is correct. But here's the thing. We may say, if we're wrong, show us, right? But here's the thing. Brother Bernie's been talking about it tonight before the service. He was talking about people not looking into. He asked me the question about distance to the sun or whatever. I can't remember the exact question. And right. Does the earth move around the sun? And I was like, yes. And he's like, how do you know? Deer in headlights. That's what I was taught in school. That's exactly right. He goes, but how did you know it was right? Because I saw a film and it looked good, right? All of these things, no matter what we say here, the pulpit, classroom, check it out. As a child of God, what is said, we have the duty and the obligation to check it out. Sorry, responsibility. It's a good word. I like that. That sounds better than the duty. But here's the thing. Once we check it out, then we have the duty to follow it. We have a responsibility to check it out, then a duty to follow it. Okay, so what I'm saying here, check it out. Please, if you find out I'm wrong, I would love to know it. Right? But it's no wonder that most of the youth today have no feelings of loyalty towards this nation. None. Okay? It is now a rarity that you find someone who is patriotic. Especially in the younger generation. Do you know the reason why most young people join the military now? It's not because I'm ready to serve my country. It's free scholarships, money for college, whatever it might be. The bennies, the benefits, the bennies. That's why they join. Some of them to get out of going to jail, but that's always been the case. That's always been the case. I'm going to tell you something, though. Most of the guys that work for me are former Air Force, Navy, Marines. They're former active duty people in the military. And one of them, him and I were talking about something, and he mentioned the fact that in his platoon going through boot camp, he said there were 5 guys. One of them became a close friend of his. He said there were 5 guys in their platoon going through boot camp that had joined the Marine Corps. It was either that or go to jail. Right? And he said those 5 guys were the best Marines in their platoon. They needed the structure and the discipline of the military. And the majority of the time, those individuals turn out one of 2 ways. The first, they're the best in their enlistment class. And they continue to be the best. They strive. They excel. Or 2, they get worse. They either get better or they get worse. And if they get worse, they ended up doing time in a federal penitentiary and dishonorably discharged. Okay? The dark and dirty lie written in this quote completely ignores the unspeakable atrocities committed by communist and socialist regimes and dictatorships around the world. You don't hear about that. Nobody talks about the bread lines in Venezuela. Nobody talks about the fact that people starve. Nobody talks about the thousands of people that are turned away in Miami because they're trying to get here from Cuba. Nobody talks about that stuff. This quote plants the idea in the mind of a 10-year-old that he lives in a terrible place. I hear young people make statements. We've got 4 kids in the house, so you hear a lot of stuff, right? Just keep your ears open. You'll hear a lot of things. And I'll hear things, and it'll make me upset. When I hear someone make the statement about how horrible their life is or how horrible things are, I've spent time in third world countries. I've literally watched kids buck naked in the dump looking for something that their parents can sell so they can buy food. And they're complaining about a phone charger. Or not having money to buy a brand new game for their system or whatever it might be. Or the food that's in the fridge or in the pantry is not what they want. They don't like that specific type or that specific brand or that.
If it's on the table, you better eat it.
You've been to those countries, but you've also lived in the third world.
Yes, I've been to those countries and I've lived in a third world country. So it bothers me. But why does that happen? Because they're conditioned. Okay? They're conditioned. Brainwashed. The quote, combined with many others of its kind, would endeavor to so brainwash the youth to the point that, and this is my favorite part of the lesson tonight, that totalitarianism, if you can't spell it right now, don't worry. When we get over to a couple more slides, you'll be able to see it and spell it. Would be the only alternative acceptable to the supposed awesome corruption of the United States. This country is so corrupted, we need to go and have China take over. I've been to China. Folks, we don't want that. I even got this off Google. Thank you, Google. No. But I couldn't find my dictionary. I couldn't find my dictionary. I know, right? Where was my, I don't know. That kind of a day. Totalitarian. Relating to a system of government that is centralized and dictatorial and requires complete subservience to the state. What does that sound like? I'm going to tell you something. I didn't put it on here because I figured if I did, Facebook or YouTube would say, hey, you can't use somebody else's graphics, right? But I'm going to be honest. If you go on Google and you type in totalitarian, the school teacher had to educate. Thank you for educating me. I appreciate it. All right. You type that word in, search engine on Google. No joke. What does it mean? You'll see this word, exactly this statement right here that you see on the screen. You'll see that, And then over to the right, they have images. I kid you not. There was a little graphic with 4 men on it. Stalin, Hitler, Mao. You know who the 4th one was? Mussolini. There's a little graphic with those 4 gentlemen's faces on it. I was like, ha ha! I wanted to put it on here so y'all could see it, but like I said, I figured that would cut our whole video off, so I said, I'll leave it off. There was another graphic. Tools of a totalitarian government are, the first one, the first tool that they use is propaganda. Does that sound familiar? We now call it media. The second tool is police terror. We haven't seen that one yet. But they started. Did y'all pay attention to what happened out west? It's a couple years ago now. Maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Some federal policemen, Bureau of Land Management, came on a rancher's land and told him he had to get, it was no longer his land. There was a standoff for a long time with a lot of automatic weapons facing at each other. And one man was killed. There's a lot about that. Look it up. The rancher is still in prison, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Some of the men that worked for him and family members and friends that came to help him, some of them are still on trial. And it was their land. Okay? It was real big. And then, hush. Not a word. Police terror. We've already got that. Look at what's happening today. Everyone talks about the police. The police are bad. The police are bad. The police are bad. The police are bad. I was raised that a cop was your best friend. If you had nothing to be, that you were supposed to be doing, that was your best friend. You got lost? Yeah, you went to your policeman and said, hey, I don't know where my parents are. Well, son, what's your name? What's your parents' name? We'll find them, right? But now kids see cops and run. It's 5-0, 5-0, run. Why? Why? Propaganda. Okay? Censorship. Does that sound familiar? I've got our broadcast on my phone here, okay, going. So while I'm talking, it's actually doing this thing here, and I can look down and see it. Kind of weird, I know. But if I say something that Facebook or YouTube does not like, they will shut it off. Not only will they shut it off, they will get rid of this video, and you won't be able to find it. That is why we save copies. We've already been dinged by Facebook. We've already been dinged by YouTube. But censorship. Why is this not censorship? And why is them shutting us off legal? Any idea? Because it's a private company. It's a private company. The First Amendment only applies legally. Company can do what it wants. You have to fight them in court. Legally. But see, censorship, if we don't like somebody, we're loud enough about them, it'll be quieted. The last tool of a totalitarian government is indoctrination. And that has been in process in this country since the 30s, 20s and 30s. And actually, indoctrination is first. You can't have the others without indoctrination. Because if the people aren't indoctrinated, then guess what? Propaganda, they don't believe it. They get rid of it. Police terror, they don't put up with it. They get rid of those police officers, those officials that stand for it. Censorship, they don't put up with it. I'm going to be honest with you. Most people today, this is not just children of God, but all of these things do apply to children of God. And I've gone over, and I apologize. I'm almost done. Without indoctrination, censorship cannot happen. Because I'm going to be honest with you. The vast majority of people, if it does not affect them, it's okay. And it's the same thing with God's people. If it doesn't affect them, it's all right. And here's the thing. Brother Bernie's been preaching on subjects that are not nice. He's been stepping all over my toes. My toes, my feet, my legs, my hands. But that's what it should be. Next lesson, we'll continue to take a closer look at these quotes. We only got into 2 or 3 of them, and we had 7. So we'll try to get through the rest of them. in our next lesson. No, these lessons, there's so much to them. I try to not pack too much in, but it's tough. It really is tough. And sadly, I stopped at a certain point, and I was like, that's 22 slides. We'll be done in 25 minutes. And then I got done, and I was like, oh, that's 35 slides. Maybe we can squeeze that into an hour. Right, so we went over. But thank you all for coming in. All of these things that we've been talking about in humanism affect us every day. And it's just it doesn't just affect us in our daily life secularly. Every one of these things affects us in our daily life spiritually. They impact us spiritually. Too many times we don't think about it like that. We allow the secular world to impact us spiritually, and we don't think about the fact that our spiritual life is to impact our secular, not the other way around. So let's pray for each other, keep each other in prayer, and look forward to seeing you all Sunday morning.